In 1803, the United States wanted to buy one city. Just one. The city was New Orleans, and that made sense because New Orleans controlled the mouth of the Mississippi River. And the Mississippi River was basically America's giant water highway. Farmers in the West could send wheat, corn, pork, and other goods down the river to New Orleans. Then those goods could be shipped to the rest of the world. So if America could use New Orleans, Western farmers were happy. And if America could not use New Orleans, Western farmers were like, "Great, I guess I will sell my corn to the squirrels." There was only one problem. New Orleans did not belong to America. It belonged to Spain. And Spain also controlled the huge territory called Louisiana. Not the modern state of Louisiana, that little thing down here. No, this was giant Louisiana. It stretched from the Mississippi River toward the Rocky Mountains. It was so big that even the people who... But for America, the most important part was New Orleans. Because if a foreign power controlled New Orleans, that foreign power could control America's Western trade. And that was a big problem. Now, at first, Spain let Americans use the port. The Americans sent goods down the Mississippi, stored them in New Orleans, and shipped them out. Everyone was happy enough. Then in 1802, Spain suddenly closed access to the port, and Americans in the West lost their minds. "Excuse me, Spain, that is our river. Actually, it is next to our city. But our stuff is on it." That sounds like your stuff's problem. Western farmers were angry. American politicians were nervous, and President Thomas Jefferson had to figure out what to do. Jefferson was a strange kind of president for this problem. He liked small government. He believed presidents should follow the Constitution carefully. And now he was about to make one of the biggest federal decisions in American history. History enjoys irony. Jefferson knew that if America did not secure New Orleans, the Western settlers might start thinking, maybe the government back east is not very useful. And that was dangerous. Because the United States was still young, very young. The Constitution had only been in effect since 1789. George Washington had been president, John Adams had been president, and now Jefferson was trying to keep the country together while everyone was arguing about politics, land, trade, and whether the government should be allowed to do anything interesting. Meanwhile, Europe was doing what Europe did best, having a giant argument with weapons. Over in France, a man named Napoleon Bonaparte had taken power. Napoleon was ambitious. And by ambitious, I mean he looked at Europe and thought, this map has too many countries. He also wanted to rebuild a French empire in North America, and for that, he needed Louisiana. So France made a secret deal with Spain. Spain would give Louisiana back to France. This was very bad news for America. Because Spain was not great at controlling Louisiana, Spain was far away, stretched thin, and not exactly excited about fighting a war with the United States over every angry farmer with a boat. But France? France under Napoleon was different. Napoleon had armies. Napoleon had plans. Napoleon had the kind of confidence usually found in people who should be supervised. So when Jefferson learned that Louisiana might belong to France again, he got worried. Because if Napoleon controlled New Orleans, America had a serious problem. So Jefferson sent Robert Livingston, the American minister in France, to negotiate. Then he sent James Monroe to help. Their mission was simple: buy New Orleans. Maybe also buy some nearby. That was not on the shopping list. America was willing to spend around $10 million for New Orleans and maybe West Florida, which sounds like a lot, but compared to what happened next, it was basically walking into a store to buy a sandwich and leaving with the building. While the Americans were preparing to negotiate, Napoleon's American Empire was falling apart before it even started. The key was Saint-Domingue. Today, we know it as Haiti. At the time, it was France's richest colony. It produced sugar and coffee, and it was built on the brutal labor of enslaved people. Then, the enslaved people revolted. The Haitian Revolution became one of the most important revolutions in world history. France tried to regain control. Napoleon sent a huge expedition, but the French army faced fierce resistance. And then, yellow fever showed up. And yellow fever was like, "Hello, I will be ruining everyone's plans today." France's Caribbean empire was collapsing, and without Saint-Domingue, Louisiana was much less useful to Napoleon. Louisiana was supposed to help feed and support the French Caribbean, but if the Caribbean plan failed, Louisiana became a giant piece of land that France had to defend from Britain, Spain, and maybe the United States. And Napoleon had another problem. He needed money. Because he was about to go back to war with Britain, and wars are expensive. Armies need uniforms, horses need food, cannons need metal, soldiers need pay. And Napoleon needed all of Europe to understand that he was very important. That also costs money. So Napoleon looked at Louisiana and basically said, "What if we just sell it?" His advisors were not all thrilled. "Sir, Louisiana is enormous." "Yes. It could become a great French empire." "Can it fight Britain for me next month?" "No." "Can it give me money?" "If we sell it." "Excellent." Then the French offered the Americans something shocking. Not just New Orleans, all of Louisiana. The Americans had come to buy a city. France offered them a territory larger than many countries. Livingston and Monroe probably had one of the greatest "are we allowed to do this" moments in diplomatic history. Because they had instructions, and those instructions did not say, "If Napoleon offers you half a continent, improvise." But the offer was too good to ignore. The price was $15 million. That was a huge amount of money for the young United States. But for the amount of land involved, it was incredibly cheap. The purchase included about 828,000 square miles. That is over 2 million square kilometers, for about $15 million, which comes out to only a few cents per acre. In other words, America bought land the way your uncle buys random stuff at a garage sale. Do we need this? No. Is it cheap? But there was a serious problem. Jefferson was not sure the Constitution allowed him to buy territory like this. Remember, Jefferson believed in limited federal power, and now the federal government was about to double the size of the country with one treaty. That is a pretty big limited government moment. Jefferson considered asking for a constitutional amendment, but that would take time, and Napoleon might change his mind. And if there was one thing everyone knew about Napoleon, it was that he could change a lot of things very quickly. So Jefferson decided to accept the deal. Is this constitutional? Maybe. Should we ask everyone first? No time. But you believe in strict limits on federal power? Yes. And you are doubling the country? Also, yes. Interesting. History is complicated. The treaty was signed in 1803. The Senate approved it. And just like that, the United States doubled in size. On paper. And because a treaty is easy to sign, Actually controlling a continent-sized territory is much harder. You need maps, you need forts, you need officials, you need roads. You need people willing to move there. You need other countries to agree with your borders. And you need the people already living there to accept that someone far away just bought a claim to their home. Which, unsurprisingly, many of them did not. So the Louisiana Purchase was not like buying a house and getting the keys. It was more like buying a giant, confusing treasure map where half the landmarks are missing, and several other people say, "Excuse me, we live on the treasure." But for the United States, even a confusing map was enough. Because once the country had a legal claim, settlers, surveyors, soldiers, and politicians could begin pushing that claim westward. That is why this deal mattered so much. It did not just add land, it added direction. Before Louisiana, After Louisiana, America was moving west across it. That last part matters. Because maps make land look easy. You color a big area on a map and say, "This is ours now." But the people living there may have other opinions. And many native nations already lived across the Louisiana Territory. The land was not empty. It was home. It had villages, hunting grounds, trade routes, sacred places, alliances, enemies, languages, and histories. France could sell its claim. America could buy that claim. But that did not mean the land was simply available. This is one of the biggest problems in American expansion. The government often talked about land as if it were empty. But it was not empty. It was just not owned in the way European empires wanted to recognize. So the Louisiana Purchase was a brilliant deal for the United States, and it was the beginning of many new conflicts for the people already living there. Both things are true. But that future came at a cost. Now, after buying Louisiana, the United States had another question. What exactly did we buy? Because the borders were not clear. The eastern boundary was the Mississippi River. That part was easy. But the western boundary was vague. The northern boundary was vague. The southern boundary was disputed. Basically, America bought a huge mystery box. And everyone knows mystery boxes are exciting until you have to govern them. Jefferson wanted to know what was out there, so he sent an expedition. This became the Lewis and Clark expedition. Meriwether Lewis and William Clark led a group called the Corps of Discovery. Their job was to explore the new territory, map routes, study plants and animals, establish relations with native nations, and hopefully find a water route to the Pacific. Spoiler, they did not find an easy river highway all the way to the Pacific. Because mountains exist, and mountains are very rude to boats. Lewis and Clark traveled across the continent with the help of many native peoples. One of the most important figures was Sacagawea, a Shoshone woman who helped guide and interpret during part of the journey. Without native knowledge, the expedition would have been much harder and maybe impossible. So the United States bought a massive territory. Then it had to learn what was actually in it. And what was in it? A lot. Future states, future farms, future conflicts, future railroads, future cities, future arguments about slavery. Because every time America gained new land, it gained a new problem. Would slavery be allowed there? Would new states be free states or slave states? Would power in Congress shift north or south? The Louisiana Purchase did not create the slavery debate, but it made the debate much bigger. Because now there was so much more land to argue about. In 1820, the Missouri Compromise tried to deal with part of this problem. Maine entered as a free state. And Congress drew a line across part of the Louisiana Purchase. Because when politicians do not solve a problem, sometimes they draw a line and hope the future behaves. The future did not behave. But that is another video. For now, the important thing is that the Louisiana Purchase changed almost everything. It doubled the size of the United States. It gave America control of the Mississippi River. It secured New Orleans. It opened the way for westward expansion. It made Jefferson look like a genius and a hypocrite at the same time, which is a very efficient use of one decision. It weakened France in North America. It helped Napoleon fund war in Europe. It worried Spain. It changed the future of native nations. And it gave the United States the space to become a continental power. Before the Purchase, the United States was mostly a country east of the Mississippi. After the Purchase, it had a path across the country, but close enough for Americans to start looking west and saying, "What if we keep going?" And when Americans start saying that, maps get nervous. The funny thing is that almost no one planned it exactly this way. Jefferson wanted New Orleans. Napoleon wanted a French empire in America. Spain wanted to avoid problems. Western farmers wanted to ship their goods. Haiti wanted freedom. Britain and France wanted to fight each other again. And somehow, all of those things crashed together and created one of the biggest real estate deals in history. That is how history works sometimes, not like a straight line. More like a group project where everyone has different goals and no one reads the instructions. Napoleon sold Louisiana because his plans collapsed. Jefferson bought it because the opportunity was too big to refuse. Congress approved it because even people who had doubts could look at the map and say, "Okay, that is a lot of land." So yes, America wanted to buy one city. But because Napoleon needed money, France lost Haiti, Spain made a secret deal, Western farmers needed a river, and Jefferson decided not to overthink the Constitution for once. America bought half a continent instead. Not bad for a shopping trip. The Louisiana Purchase was one of the best deals in American history. It was also the beginning of new conflicts, new expansion, and new arguments that would shape the country for generations. Because land is never just land. It is power. It is money. It is movement. It is home. It is conflict. And in 1803, $15 million bought the United States a future bigger than almost anyone had imagined. America went shopping for New Orleans and came home with an empire-sized receipt.